You have no idea how deep the deception runs. You were not just taught to be polite. You were indoctrinated to amputate your power and call it virtue. You were taught to romanticize your own obedience, trained like a domesticated beast, to wag your tail at disapproval. And when the woman frowns, when her affection is withheld, when her gaze turns cold, you panic, you perform, you apologize, and you think, this is what a good man does. But nature already warned you. The weak are the first to moralize their submission as goodness. It is not virtue. It is fear, wearing a halo. You were not broken by cruelty. You were broken by your hunger to be loved. You betrayed yourself for a smile. You abandoned your values for a kiss. You reshaped your soul to be less threatening, less masculine, less you. And still, she left. Or worse, she stayed and disrespected you because you taught her that your manhood was for sale. And all it took to buy it was a withdrawal of warmth. Most men collapse under this. They call it love, but it's survival. They want peace at any price, even if it costs them their center. And when they are used, discarded, cheated on, they still return, not out of strength, but addiction. Because when you don't have a spine, pain becomes the only thing you know how to cling to. But then, she meets him, the one man who doesn't break when she withdraws, who doesn't negotiate his standards for her affection, who doesn't entertain emotional theater or respond to weaponized silence. The Stoic man, the man who doesn't need her to feel real. And that terrifies her. She doesn't fear him because he's dangerous. She fears him because he's immune. He can't be programmed. He's not dependent. He isn't starved for her attention. He does not orbit her like a dog trained to fetch her moods. Instead, she's confronted by something primal, ancient, a man no longer trapped in the psychological matrix she was taught to control. Nietzsche wrote, "The higher man is distinguished from the lower by his fearlessness in facing the abyss." The Stoic man has faced it, stared into abandonment, and didn't beg, met with silence, and didn't collapse, unloved, and yet, never lost his reflection in the mirror. He was forged by loss, not destroyed by it. He does not fear walking away, because he has walked alone before, and found strength, not sorrow. His solitude, it isn't a prison, it's a fortress. He no longer tolerates disrespect, because he no longer tolerates the version of himself that ever did. He will not beg, he will not chase, he will not plead for the attention of someone who uses love as a leash. He is not the servant of her validation. He is the sovereign of his own soul. And that's what makes her tremble. Because most men, they crack, withhold warmth, and they whimper, raise your voice, and they shrink, threaten to leave, and they promise to change. But this man, does nothing. He simply watches. And in that stillness, she feels the collapse of her script. The lines she rehearsed, they no longer land. The emotional buttons she's always used, now return. No signal. Because this man, he's no longer plugged into her machinery. He sees the game, and he does not play it. You must understand something that modern culture will never tell you. The average man is not respected. He is managed. He exists in limbo between utility and obedience. He is useful when compliant, praised when submissive, and replaced when he begins to question. And still, he continues to serve. Why? Because he has been conditioned to seek affection like oxygen, to interpret validation as proof of existence. But nature warned, he who does not have the strength to be alone will always be a slave. And most men today? Slaves. Calling it love, they hand over their vision, their principles, their time, and their voice, in the hope that it buys them peace. And for a while, it seems to work. She smiles, she softens, she opens up, but it's a trap made of velvet. Because behind the affection is an unspoken contract. You must remain predictable, pleasing, pliable. The moment you assert something she doesn't like, the contract is revoked. And most men, terrified of emotional exile, quickly fall back in line. But the Stoic man? He's not afraid of exile. He's already been there and discovered that it is better to be alone in truth than adored in self-betrayal. He will not shrink for her comfort. He will not lie for her praise. He will not dilute himself just to be allowed close. He's not trying to be accepted. He's trying to remain intact. And that, more than strength, more than wealth, more than charm, is what unsettles her, because it means she has no control. She cannot dictate the tempo of the relationship with silence. She cannot summon his attention by withholding her body. She cannot bend his frame with guilt or emotional spectacle. For the first time, she is face to face with a man who sees her clearly and remains unmoved. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "The most perfidious way of harming a cause consists of defending it deliberately with faulty arguments." In the context of modern masculinity, the cause is your strength, and the faulty argument? That strength is cruelty. That boundaries are abuse. That stoicism is repression. But these are lies. Lies told to keep you dependent, because a man who does not need to be approved of is a man who cannot be controlled. The Stoic man has dismantled these arguments within himself. He knows peace without power is submission, compassion without clarity is weakness, love without respect is slow suicide. And because he knows this, he no longer participates in emotional games. He doesn't argue with irrationality. He doesn't explain his silence. He doesn't validate behavior that violates his soul. He simply withdraws quietly, finally, and in doing so, he triggers something few women have ever felt: the panic that comes from losing access to a man who doesn't need you. Because most relationships aren't built on reverence, they're built on emotional leverage, and the Stoic man, through presence alone, destroys that entire economic structure of power she is used to winning by default, used to being praised on arrival, used to men folding before even being asked, loyalty offered before character is vetted, crowns handed out for free. But not here. The Stoic man does not offer the throne. He does not praise what he does not respect, and she feels it deeply. It destabilizes her, because he is not looking for someone to save. He is looking for someone who has already saved herself, and she begins to feel what Nietzsche described. What is done out of love always takes place beyond good and evil. The Stoic man loves, but not with conditions dictated by culture, not with the rules she was raised to expect. He loves without submission, without distortion, without self-erasure. And that love, clean, whole, unyielding, is more dangerous than rejection, because it demands she rise to meet him. Most men lower themselves to gain her trust. The Stoic man remains high and challenges her to rise or walk away. And that's why she shakes, because this man doesn't crave access. He guards it. He guards his time, his values, his direction, and more than anything, his emotional world, not out of fear, but reverence. His emotions are earned, not extracted. His intimacy is a privilege, not a prize to be demanded. He's not distant, he's disciplined, and that is a masculinity she's never encountered before. It doesn't beg, it doesn't impress, it doesn't perform, it simply exists with weight, and that presence commands one thing: come correct or leave. Nietzsche once said, "You have your way, I have my way. As for the right way, it does not exist." That's how the Stoic man lives, not trying to be perfect, just trying to be true. And because he is true, he cannot be bought, not with beauty, not with compliments, not with promises dressed in manipulation. He sees the truth in her, the one she tries to hide. He sees control disguised as vulnerability, tests disguised as tenderness, chaos masquerading as passion, and he calls it out, not with argument, but with absence. No fight, no fury, just a refusal to participate. He doesn't reward it, he doesn't bend, because he is not here to regulate her emotions. He is here to protect his own. That is what sets him apart. While other men calibrate themselves to her mood. He calibrates only to his mission. And slowly, she realizes she is not the center of his universe. His purpose is, if she can't align with that purpose, she will be left behind. Not with malice, but with unapologetic precision. That is the real emotional earthquake. Not dominance, not bravado, but consistency. His unshakable identity, his refusal to flinch under pressure. She throws everything: withdrawal, drama, seduction, silence. And still, he does not budge, because he already decided what kind of man he would be. And no woman, no matter how beautiful, no matter how desirable, will ever rewrite his definition. That is what shakes her, not because he is cruel, but because he is complete. The most terrifying mirror a woman can face is not one made of glass. It's a man who sees her clearly and does not flinch, because in his presence, every fantasy she was raised to believe, every trick she's practiced, every move that once bent lesser men, dies quietly. The manipulation? Useless. The performance? Collapsed. The mask? Slipped. And for the first time, she stands exposed, not in flesh, but in spirit, faced with a question she cannot answer. What do I offer a man who cannot be seduced? She expected worship, but he is not interested in beauty. Without behavior, she expected to be chased, but he doesn't chase what doesn't move with grace toward him. She expected to control the gravity of the relationship, but now she sees he orbits nothing but his own truth. Nietzsche said, the individual has always had to struggle to not be overwhelmed by the tribe. And this man, he has struggled, and he has won. He has become his own standard, his own North Star, his own master. She has no power over him, not because he's hardened, but because he's sorted. He does not need her to affirm who he is. His masculinity doesn't tremble under her disapproval. He can love her deeply, wholly, truly, but he will never beg to be loved back. He will never barter with his identity to win her affection. And in that stillness, in that posture, he becomes something most women have never truly encountered. A man who is emotionally present, yet psychologically untouchable. This is what forces her to confront herself, because now, for the first time, she must ask, can I match this man's standard without games? Can I stand in my own truth without tactics? Can I give without expecting to govern? Most can't, not because they're incapable, but because they've never had to. They've been surrounded by men who collapse under tension, men who confuse affection with self-erasure, men who offer their crown in exchange for comfort. But this man, the Stoic man, does not trade. He offers, and if his offer is not respected, he retracts it with finality. No explanation, no negotiation, no prolonged drama. He doesn't warn, he doesn't threaten, he just vanishes and leaves her alone with her untested self. Nietzsche warned, the greatest danger in life is not pain, but comfort that numbs you to your own mediocrity. The Stoic man brings no such comfort. He brings pressure, not with shouting, but with presence, not by force, but by example. His clarity cuts through every performance. His structure exposes every falsehood, and she feels it. She feels the quiet pressure of standing before a man who does not need her to feel powerful, who does not ask for her permission to stand tall, who does not flatter her fears or inflate her ego just to keep her around. This man is a reckoning, a philosophical confrontation, a walking storm of honesty that says, become who you truly are, or leave. He doesn't make ultimatums. He doesn't set traps. He simply holds frame, and the world either aligns or breaks against it. The Stoic man doesn't change the rules. He reveals them. He reveals that most love is not love. It is power, disguised as affection. That most relationships are not built on truth, but on unspoken threats. If you do not make me feel what I want to feel, I will withdraw. That's the real contract, one you've signed, in silence, with your pride as the currency. But the Stoic man burns that contract. On arrival, he does not accept love that comes with a leash. He does not bow to moods or barter with respect. He has chosen something higher than affection. He has chosen himself, and that choice, that quiet, unyielding choice, is what Nietzsche called the beginning of all true power. Because you cannot call yourself free if your peace can be bought with approval. You cannot call yourself strong if your standards collapse when touched by silence. You cannot call yourself a man if you must be emotionally supervised by someone else. The Stoic man has walked through all of it. He's had women cry in front of him to gain control. He's had affection dangled like bait. He's had sex weaponized, silence rehearsed to provoke a reaction, but none of it works. Not anymore, because he has seen through the mask. Nietzsche wrote, "He who fights with monsters should see to it that he does not become a monster." And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. And the Stoic man has done exactly that. He has stared into the black hole of emotional dependence. He has confronted the version of himself that once begged, that once twisted and folded and bled for love that was never truly love. And he killed that version without ceremony, without regret. He does not hate her. He has simply evolved beyond her control. Now she sees it. This man, he does not flinch when she's angry. He does not panic when she's distant. He does not dance when she throws a tantrum. He simply remains, not cold, not cruel, just centered. And that presence, that unshakable presence, shakes her to the core, because it tells her, without a single word, I am not here for your chaos. I am here for truth. Match it, or I walk. She is no longer the gravity in the room, no longer the prize, no longer the puppet master pulling strings of guilt and desire. She is now just one soul, standing before another. And for the first time, her tricks don't work. Now she has two choices: rise or retreat. And nature would call this the moment of self-overcoming, the moment she must abandon manipulation and walk through the fire of truth, to stand beside a man who no longer bends, but few do, because truth is expensive, and most would rather keep their control than risk their identity. This is why Stoic men are feared, not because they are cruel, but because they force transformation, or they force departure. There is no middle ground. There is no half-true love. Not here, not with him. Most men you meet are either trying to be accepted or trying to be understood. They're selling something: kindness, loyalty, patience, charm, in hopes it will buy them a seat at a table that was never set for them. But the Stoic man? He is not selling. He is not waiting to be chosen. He is not adjusting his value to match demand. He is the table. He does not chase. He summons, not through arrogance, but through alignment. His life is not a resume of qualities he hopes you notice. It is a living standard you must rise to meet. And if you can't, he will not lower it. He will not explain it. He will not apologize for it. He will simply carry on. Because the Stoic man does not recruit. He attracts, not by trying, but by being. He does not say, choose me. He says, match me. And if she can't, he does not punish. He does not persuade. He releases, silently, finally, completely. Because his love is not a bargain. It is a reflection of his soul. And his soul is not for sale. He is unmoved by beauty. If it lacks depth, unimpressed by charm. If it lacks consistency, unwilling to tolerate chaos, just to avoid loneliness. He would rather stand alone in truth than lie beside someone he cannot respect. That is what separates him. That is what makes him rare, and rarity is power. Because what is rare is not chaste. It is chosen carefully. He doesn't raise his voice to be heard. His presence is volume enough. He doesn't argue for value. He embodies it. The world may not understand him. Women may misread him, but he doesn't shift. He doesn't bend, just to be understood. Because understanding is not his goal. Integrity is. So when she realizes she cannot move him with guilt, or pull him with drama, cannot bait him with games, or bend him with silence, she stands before a truth she's never known. A man who loves without losing himself. A man who gives without needing permission. A man who stays only if he is met. And that, more than anything, is what makes the Stoic man unforgettable. He doesn't crave validation. He creates gravity, not by chasing, but by anchoring, rooted in purpose, in principle, in unshakable clarity. While others sway with opinion, mood, manipulation, he remains. She tests, she pulls, she withdraws, and still, he remains. Because his sense of self was not gifted by her, so it cannot be taken by her. His gaze doesn't flinch, not from beauty, not from threats, not from loneliness. He has already faced the echo of solitude, already walked through the fire of abandonment, and found not emptiness, but strength. He discovered what most never will, that peace earned alone is stronger than love begged for. And now, he walks differently. He speaks less. He sees more. He gives less, but it means more, because the Stoic man has learned the rarest truth, to be whole, without needing another to complete him. He doesn't entertain chaos. He doesn't reward drama. He doesn't bend for temporary comfort, because he knows momentary peace that costs your soul isn't peace at all. Most men shrink at the first sign of withdrawal, but not him. He doesn't fill silence with desperation. He lets the silence speak, and in that silence, she hears his strength. She feels the pressure, not from his hands, but from his presence. No begging, no bartering, no performance, just stillness, so loud it breaks her conditioning. Because for the first time, she meets a man who doesn't orbit her mood, but lives in his mission. He doesn't explain who he is. He shows it in every boundary, every breath, every step forward. That does not stop for her confusion. He does not pause his path for comfort, because comfort has cost him before. She expected to lead. He doesn't follow. She expected to manipulate. He doesn't move, not out of malice, but out of clarity. I am not here to be managed. I am here to be matched. And that truth shatters her expectations. Shall I go on? You said, continue. ChatGPT said. She searches for the levers, the ones that always worked before. But now, they pull nothing. No reaction, no plea, no chase. Because this man, he is untethered. She offers beauty. He admires it, but is unmoved by it. She offers affection. He receives it, but does not rely on it. She offers control. He denies it. Without a word, he knows. True power is not loud. It's still, not theatrical, but unwavering. She's used to being worshipped for existing. He requires substance, not perfection, but presence, not performance, but partnership. He doesn't test her. He invites her to rise, to match the strength. He refuses to lower. And if she can't, he will walk, not out of rage, but because his soul is not negotiable. The Stoic man doesn't need revenge. He doesn't need applause. He doesn't need validation. He simply continues forward, focused, free. And that, more than anything, is what haunts her. He doesn't look back. Not because he's heartless, but because he's whole. She realizes now, this man cannot be shaken with silence, seduction, or sorrow. He doesn't flinch when she withdraws. He doesn't fold when she frowns. He doesn't fracture when she withholds. Because his sense of self is no longer tied to her affection. She is no longer the storm. He is no longer the leaf. He is the mountain, and mountains do not chase the weather. He offered his truth once, freely, fully, but when it was met with manipulation, tests, and disrespect, he didn't argue. He didn't plead. He simply retracted with finality. That silence? It's not passive. It's power. It's clarity. It's a message written in stone. You had a man who stood strong. You tried to bend him. Now you stand alone. because he would rather walk alone in truth than be embraced in illusion. And that, more than anything, is the echo she's left with. A presence so grounded, it made her question her gravity. She replays every moment. Not the ones where he smiled, but the ones where he didn't react. That moment she tested him, he didn't flinch. That time she went cold, he stayed warm, but didn't chase. He didn't raise his voice, he raised his standards. Now she understands. This wasn't a man trying to win her. It was a man trying to stay true to himself. She thought control was power. He showed her that peace is. And once she lost access to his peace, she felt the truth. He was the prize, not because he said so, but because he lived so. While other men begged, he bowed to no one. While others chased validation, he followed his purpose. He didn't just walk away. He walked forward, without blame, without bitterness, without breaking, because the Stoic man knows love isn't measured by how much he's needed, but by how much he remains when he's not. And in his absence, she finally saw him. And now, she doesn't just remember him. She studies him, the silence he held, the boundaries he kept, the way he never flinched. When she withdrew affection, like a weapon, she tries the same patterns on others. They all fold, they all chase, they all lose themselves to win her. But him, he let her go and found more of himself. And that unshakable stillness, that untouchable resolve, that is what echoes louder than any words he could have said. The Stoic man didn't need revenge. His dignity was enough. He never sought to prove her wrong. He just proved himself right. By becoming someone no storm could shake, no silence could wound, and no affection could purchase. Now, she doesn't miss his attention. She misses his absence, because where others were eager to please, he was content to walk away whole. And in a world full of noise, that kind of stillness, it haunts. So here it is. The closing truth. Power isn't found in control. It's found in clarity. Love isn't real if it costs your integrity. And any affection that demands your obedience isn't love, it's leverage. The Stoic man knows. You don't rise by being accepted. You rise by refusing to betray yourself. So stand still. Stand true. Stand alone if you must. Because the man who walks with truth will always go farther than the one who bends for affection. And when the world finally sees what it could not control, it doesn't forget. Be the echo they hear long after you've gone, unshaken, unowned, unstoppable.